Hello and welcome to Dugout Debrief. I'm your host, Chris DeLuca. This is Boom Broadcasting's one, first, and only baseball-centric podcast. I'm once again happy to be talking about something I care about so much on the best up-and-coming sports YouTube channel, best up-and-coming movie reviews. We got that right now. We talk about pro wrestling. We got a little bit of everything. We even got stuff about personal lives, better life habits with the man behind the mic of the Prez Michael Davis. We got everything you can need here entertainment wise. But right now we're here to talk about baseball. And like I always say, ladies and gentlemen, I am not here to waste your time. That's kind of becoming my catchphrase at this point. So let's dive right into the news of the week. So Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge win the MVP, and who's surprised? And I think the next major award we're about to talk about in the next segment's not exactly a surprise either. Ohtani was the first 50 for 50 season in MLB history. Led the NL in WAR with 9.2, plate appearances with 731, runs with 134, home runs with 54, RBIs with 130. He led in OBS, slugging, OPS plus, and run OPS as well. Basically, it's just runs batted in based on WAR, so more just kind of relevant, I guess, runs, best way to explain that statistic. And you're going to see this theme with the other three people that have the awards is basically they lead in all of the major statistical categories. I mean, Aaron Judge also leads in WAR, home runs, RBIs, walks, which was insane because he's not really a guy you picture walking, despite the fact that he only had 22 intentional, 20 intentional base on balls, which is league leading, which was very interesting. He had 133 walks, but only 20 of them were intentional, which I would picture that would happen more. I mean, Barry Bonds would average like 50 to 70 of those a year, which was something like that, which is crazy. But yeah, Judge also led in OBS, slugging, OPS plus, and again, that ROBS, which is again runs plus WAR and plus total bases. So basically just, again, relevant runs you scored. And yeah, despite having a weak playoff, Aaron Judge was definitely deserving of the American League MVP, and Shohei Ohtani was definitely deserving of the National League MVP. I mean, these guys are once-in-a-generation talents. This is good for the game. Everybody knows who the heck these guys are. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know who these guys are who casually watches sports. I mean, you could be one of those people that says baseball is boring or whatever, which, we don't like those kind of people on this show. But it's called Dugout Debrief. Sorry to break it to you guys. But even they know who both of them are. Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, faces of the games, and 100% deserving of that MVP award in the American and National League, respectively. And now we're going to go move on to the other major award, the Cy Young. Tarek Skubal led the American League in WAR, wins, Ks, and ERA. And I don't think you can get more descriptive of a good pitcher than that. I mean, the only thing with Skubal is the team around him, which may be very up and coming, but is still lackluster compared to the other guy the guy in the National League who won the Cy Young, Chris Sale, who also led in WARs, wins, Ks, and ERA. It's almost like there's a theme here. And Skubal was fantastic in the playoffs. He's one of the major reasons that the Tigers got to where they were. And I think Skubal will continue to dominate. Chris Sale led in Ks per nines, which is a very important statistic. And again, good for the game compared to the MVPs. They're a little bit more in a situation where they need to do more. And this isn't necessarily because you're a pitcher and you have to go and get at least 5 or 6 innings each start. And while hitters may be out there, pretty much every day, and pitchers are only out there every 5 to 6 days, hitters can go 0 for 4, 2-3 games in a row. That's fine. You can go 1 for 4, whatever. Like, both Judge and Ohtani did that multiple times throughout the season, and nobody's going to bat an eye. But if you have 2-3 bad starts, that basically ends your Cy Young campaign. I mean, hey, look at Alek Manoah a few years back. I mean, just hit that tail end of his 2022 season. I think, 2022 season really ruined the Cy Young campaign. Overall, hitters can go through slumps a lot better than pitchers can when it comes to their award eligibility, we'll say. But yeah, I mean, I think all 4 of these guys are the most deserving of the award. Honestly, I could have said this probably a little bit after the All-Star break that I would bet a lot of money that they would. But yeah, something I was not betting on was Blake Snell on a Tuesday night signed with the Dodgers for a $182 million contract for 5 years. And I think at least 60 million of this is deferred until the last year, which is just insane. The Dodgers continue to do these deferrals. And I personally like it, but obviously I'm personally biased, you know. And I'm unsure how I feel about it, to be honest with you. I mean, he's very good. He finally proved that he deserves the contract that he wanted for all these years. I mean, he got the 1 year with San Francisco. He has 2 Cy Youngs, and he was one of those guys that he would win a Cy Young, and then he won a Cy Young with Tampa. Then he was terrible the next year. You know, bounce back, have a great year, win a Cy Young, not great. It was kind of the on and off years. And then finally, he backed up his Cy Young campaign with a really good year last year. I will say that with how good the rotation is when it's healthy already, I wouldn't have minded saving that money for signing guys like Teoscar Hernandez or Tommy Edman more long term. But in the end, it's a smart move by the Dodgers. The rotation is still great. It would have been great with or without him, but having him is fantastic. I think he's a number one, obviously. But overall, this is just insane. I mean, the rotation as of now is Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Yoshida Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, and maybe Clayton Kershaw, Tony Gonsolin, Walker Buehler, Emmett Sheehan, too. You can't forget that Sheehan and Gonsolin are still there. Kershaw is a free agent. Walker Buehler probably is not coming back after the signing of Blake Snell. He's a free agent as well, so I don't see him coming back. I think he's going to go chase a lot of money, just like the other big pitching free agents will, like Max Fried and Corbin Burns, which we'll get more into where they might go later on in the program. But again, it's truly insane. I honestly, guys, I don't even know what to make of it. I mean, I don't think that it changes that much of the Dodgers' strategy because they deferred everything. They're still going to be going after the major free agents, and who they'll go after, who knows? I mean, the only thing at this point is some pitchers might not want to go there simply because of how deep the rotation is. But you got to remember that these guys are going to get injured. I mean, at least a few of them will. It wouldn't surprise me if guys like Glasnow or Yamamoto go on the IL for periods of time. Blake Snell as well. That's one of the reasons between his occasional inconsistency and injury proneness. I do worry about the money that we gave Snell, but I think it was deserving, and it was deserving of the risk. And I'm very much looking forward to it. And I think I do speak for a lot of Dodger fans that we're, pessimistically optimistic, even though that's an oxymoron. But with that being said, we're going to go move on to our next piece of news. Yoshi Kikuchi signs a 3-year, $63 million contract. And I mean, yeah, he had a great season with Houston. He signed with the Angels. I think it was an interesting decision. I think it was an interesting decision by the Angels to go for him. He adds to the variety of Angels signings with Travis d'Arnaud, Kevin Newman, Jorge Soler, and Kyle Hendricks. So they're trying to boost that rotation between him and Hendricks, who Hendricks, fun fact, was the last member of that Chicago Cubs World Series team. Kikuchi posted a 4.05 ERA, 1.4 WAR, and had a solid finish with Houston, but I still think Houston lost that trade by what they gave up to Toronto. I don't necessarily think it's a bad deal. I just don't really understand what the Angels are doing because I think they're just kind of patching holes. And a lot of people are saying that they're trying to build like Kansas City in the sense that they're going for guys who were good in the last year who they can get for a relatively lower value. Not so much Kikuchi because he got a pretty big contract for his talent relatively with a 63 mil over 3 years. But will this help a faltering organization? I mean, d'Arnaud, Newman, Soler all had positive WAR. Hendricks had a great ERA plus, proving how circumstances do play a factor in ERA. He had a 5.92, but a great ERA plus, so that basically doesn't take that eliminates the ballpark factors. Wrigley Field is kind of an interesting ballpark offensively with its dimensions, but overall they will improve, but they still won't be close to a playoff team. They don't have the great young talent who really will have breakout seasons like Kansas City. I mean, Kansas City obviously had Bobby Witt Jr. And then they had a fantastic pitch rotation with Lugo and Singer. And I don't see the Angels replicating that, to be honest with you. I do see the Angels improving, but not to an extent that will really push them to the playoffs. I see them improving because obviously they're coming off their worst season in history. I mean, they're a relatively younger organization founded in the 60s, and they've been impressively consistent, and that's better. I mean, they're better than some teams who have been consistent in not so positive ways. So, I mean, respect to the Angels. I do think that they will improve, but not to an amount that will make them, push them to a 2002-esque year. But who knows? They could prove me wrong. And in the future, as this is the AL East preview part 2, you will eventually see our AL West preview here in the future, this MLB offseason. So we're going to go finish up this news segment with some minor transactions, or maybe, minor for some, major for others. But Phil Bickford signed with the Cubs. He's a former Dodger, former Yankee too. Seeing him without the long hair was very interesting. I didn't exactly like seeing him come out with the Dodgers, because usually that would mean things are about to get interesting and not very fun ways. The Mets signed Joey Meneses, which was interesting. I thought he had a lot better of a year than he did. He had a negative WAR and only 3 home runs with the Nationals this year. So, Mets kind of going for, I think, first baseman, especially, maybe a guy who could fill in if Pete Alonso doesn't re-sign. We're still waiting on what Alonso is going to do. And the Colorado Rockies signed Kyle Farmer and Jacob Stallings. So, again, interesting moves all around. Not hating them. They're just smaller moves. I figured I'd just mention them. Those have been a few of the little ones since the last episode of Dugout Debrief here on Boom Broadcasting. So with that being said, we're going to go move into Jason's Yankees, the AL preview. Hey, best team in the American League through and through. Regardless, they made the World Series, and they were totally deserving of that. Best team in the American League, record-wise, and how far they made it wise. They came about as close as you physically could until the World Series. So what they have Aaron Judge, MVP, Stanton, who I think, if not for Freddie Freeman's amazing World Series, could have been a World Series MVP, even if the Dodgers still won the World Series. He could go pull a Connor McDavid. If Freddie Freeman would have not had the amazing World Series that he had, I would have said that Stanton would have pulled a Connor McDavid and won the World Series MVP on the losing team, which is a very, very rare to almost never happening feat. They have Garrett Cole. They have Carlos Rodon. They have really, really fantastic guys. Again, the rotation is what's faltering, but they also have, those are the top guys. They also have some guys like Clay Holmes, Jazz Chisholm, Tommy Canal, Marcus Stroman, and obviously the young and up-and-coming Anthony Volpe and Jason Dominguez. All these guys are really, really good, and it would not surprise me if New York is right back to where they were last year. They're looking to spend. They're going into this offseason angry. I know how it feels to lose a World Series. I did it 2 years in a row. You get angry, and you want to spend money. You want to make that anger go away, and you want to resolve it, which the only way you can resolve that is winning a World Series. So they need to develop young guys to stay above their American League competition. It's good. New York is one of the better farm systems, one of the better developing teams. I mean, they just need to focus on these guys, but also spend money, and that's something that New York is good at. And again, I think that they're the best team in New York, and I think that they're the best team in the American League. And what they need, Soto. They put a bid in for him, but the other New York team outbid him. The Mets bid $660 million, and it's hard to tell. The Mets, so it depends. Soto obviously wants the most money, but does Soto want another World Series? The Mets don't have a realistic path to the World Series, and I know a lot of Mets fans are going to come after me for this. I don't see a realistic path that the Mets have to the World Series, not because they're a bad team, but simply because they're in the National League. They have to finish in front of the Phillies. They have to finish in front of the Dodgers. They have to finish in front of the Padres in the playoffs. Not only that, one of those teams in their division. That is challenging, getting in front of the Phillies. And the Phillies are still pretty darn good. The Padres are fantastic, and the Dodgers are fantastic. And you can't forget about the sleeper teams like the Brewers and the Giants, who could play spoiler to an early Mets 3-game wild card series. If I was Soto and I wanted the money, well, hey, I would go to the Mets. But what's saying that you're going to be able to see that World Series again like you did in 2024? I think New York has a much easier path there. There are a lot of American League powerhouses like the Astros that are on the way down. And I think that the path to the World Series in the American League, I'm not going to say it's easy because getting to there, it's a marathon, not a sprint, is way more realistic. I mean, Baltimore as well, a very good team, but I still think that New York will finish above Baltimore. If Soto wants to compete deep into October, if not November, he needs to stay in the Bronx. But if he wants to compete to a different level where a World Series might not mean all of that, then I say he goes to Queens, but we will see. But again, Soto is offered by the Mets $660 million. That's a pretty big chunk of change, if I do say so myself. So what else do I think they need? Jack Flaherty wouldn't be a bad fit. Wouldn't be a bad addition to the rotation. And he's going to be high priced because he had a great conclusion with the Dodgers coming over from St. Louis. But I think New York is willing to spend maybe a Paul Sewald to complement that bullpen with Clay Holmes and Tommy Canal. Add to the end of the bullpen. I wouldn't hate a Brendan Rodgers either. I mean, a guy to go, help that infield down. Rodgers is a good utility player. I mean, obviously they got Jazz and they got Volpe in the middle infield. They could go throw him at third base on and off. They can figure that out. I mean, they can move him around, and that would not be the worst possible move. Again, Brendan Rodgers, probably a guy you don't hear much about, but coming off the Rockies, very hyped up at once. Didn't have the best past few years, but I think he would be good. What's my prediction for the Yankees? 100+ wins. I think that they crack it. They crack 100 wins. I mean, obviously this year nobody did. That was the first year since 2014, I believe. Either 2011 or 2014. 2011, I think. 2011 that nobody won 100 games. I think New York does it easily. I think the Dodgers do it easily. I know I'm kind of spoiling the NL West preview, but what are you going to do? And then next, we're going to go to their best friends, a little bit north in the state of Massachusetts, as the Dropkick Murphys would say. We're going to talk about the Boston Red Sox. And there's so much, yet so little to unpack here. So it's worth considering that they could get a good deal for Tristan Casas, who had a really good year. He's a very consistent first baseman, despite the fact that he went in the 60-day IL for a long portion of this year. But the thing is, if they move on from Casas, they're going to have to go move Devers to first base. And I think that would be interesting because, one, I think that would increase his lifespan. And two, you would still get that glove out of that long-term contract. I don't see Boston wanting to go and move him to DH because they don't want to be paying this top dollar for a DH. Obviously, the Dodgers are paying top dollar for a DH, but that's temporary because he's going, Ohtani, hopefully, knocking on wood here, is going to be pitching for a long time here in the near future. But I mean, what do the Red Sox have? They have Devers, who's amazing. They have Duran, who had a fantastic year. I think like an 8.2 ERA, very good, almost American League leading. They have Trevor Story. Remember him? I mean, he's still around. They have Yoshida. They have Brian Bello, Lucas Giolito, Connor Wong, Kenley Jansen, Garrett Whitlock, and then the aforementioned Tristan Casas. All a lot of talent there, but similar to New York, to a large extent, they need pitching. I mean, maybe bring back Nathan Eovaldi. Go spend big on Corbin Burns, Max Fried. It really depends on what the Red Sox front office is comfortable doing based on where they are in relative to their competition. Again, the American League is really hard. I would say the National League is harder, but that division, I mean, you got Toronto, who I think will be spending big. You got Tampa, who will never bow out. You got New York, who's going to be the best team in the AL. I'm pretty much calling it here. And then you got Baltimore, who has had a lot of playoff disappointments, but is the best up-and-coming team that is more developed than a team like Kansas City or Detroit, in the American League at least. Again, they need to spend big to keep up with their division rivals. I mean, I would say that Trevor Story isn't looking like he's going to work out long-term. I would consider doing a trade for Trevor Story. Maybe try to deal him for whatever he's worth left. I mean, hey, For what they need, I wouldn't hate an Anthony Santander, maybe a utility guy like Jack Peterson. Santander with that power would be really nice. I mean, coming over from Baltimore, I would not hate that deal whatsoever. Jock Peterson would be good to go platoon over there for when guys get hurt. Again, they kind of need a lot, but they don't need a lot. Boston is such a weird team to talk about. And my prediction is hard because I think they could either be a wild card team or they could finish second to last in front of Tampa, because I think Tampa's going to finish last. They're a 1.5 dimensional, we'll say not 2 dimensional. They're a two-piece team offensively with Devers and Duran. And that's not good. That's not sustainable in the AL East. Their pitching is lackluster and their bullpen isn't great. It's solid, but it's not great. They're going to have to go and invest big in pitching. They're going to have to go for a Max Fried or Corbin Burns. If they do not, with how good their division is, I say they're an 80 to 85 win team. Simply said as that. You heard it here from Chris DeLuca. I think that Boston has a lot of potential, but they're still a few years out. And that division, I think, is just going to be so incredibly hard to win. And with that being said, I've pretty much wrapped up my American League East take. So to summarize this, I have New York in first. I have Baltimore in second. I have Toronto in third. And then I have Tampa, who is playing in a spring training facility I have Boston in fourth, and then Tampa is playing a spring training facility in fifth. So I think Boston will hold their heads up above water, have a respectable 80-some game win season. Then Tampa will probably be in the low 70s, but who knows? It could all flip. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy who likes to talk on the internet. So take that for what it is. So with that being said, it's time for the trivia question of the week. And what the last week's question was, what were the Miami Marlins previously known as? 1, 2, 3. The Florida Marlins. And I think that was a kind of easier one. They had the really fun teal uniforms back then. They had the 2-part ones with the pinstripes. I loved it. I loved it so much. I wish they'd go back to it. I think what they got now with the black and teal is pretty nice, but they could get better. They could get better. They could go back to what they used to have, but maybe I'm just old. Maybe I'm too old to be talking about this. So fun fact about the Marlins. Until 2020, they had only made the playoffs twice, 1997, 2003. You know what they did both years? Win the World Series, one of which by accident. You could argue both of which by accident, but who knows? Especially the second one, because they just completely tore the team apart but somehow won it. But yeah, the Marlins, Miami Marlins, previously known as the Florida Marlins, who are, in my opinion, one of the more directionless fan bases that aren't in complete, utter devastation, such as the Oakland A's, which if you can even call them a baseball club at this point, as long as Rob Manfred still allows John Fisher to own the A's, I don't even consider them a legitimate baseball team. They're just kind of an organization, a club, as they want to call themselves now, the A's Baseball Club. So, kind of reminds me of the Washington football team. But at least the Washington football team made the playoffs despite the fact that they had a losing record. So with that being said, this week's trivia question is, and we're going to college baseball here. Fun fact, WVU just coming off a regional. We lost a heartbreaker to UNC in game 1 and 2, and we went 2-0 in Chapel Hill. I was in attendance at the Chapel Hill regional for both games, and I got to see both heartaches in person, the walk-off home run by Vance Honeycutt. But that's beside the point. We're going to college baseball because a little preview of this is I might be talking a little bit of college baseball here in the future with you, ladies and gentlemen, once we're hitting the spring. That time where it's early college baseball, but spring training's still going. So it's kind of slow news in the MLB. I might be talking a little college baseball with you, ladies and gentlemen. So another preview of this spring, because we are excited for the spring, because that means spring training. As Vin Scully says, baseball always comes back, like the spring flower, like the snow goes away. With that being said, this week's trivia question is, who has the most college baseball world titles? Who has the most college baseball world titles? And we will be answering that next week. But with that being said, rounding out at about 24 and a half minutes here, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for Dugout Debrief. I want to wish you guys a happy Thanksgiving. I'm one of the only people recording this week, and I don't blame them, because everybody's spending time with their friends and family, and I ask that you guys do the same. It's like me and Carson, call us Butterball Turkeys, because we are carrying Thanksgiving. We have a monopoly over Thanksgiving. Giving, both of us posting, Carson posting on Wednesday, Lombardi Party. Check that out. He's got a preview of that big game with the Miami Dolphins at the freezing cold Lambeau Field. Make sure to check out Out of Pocket. I was just on there on Monday where I talked NFL. Make sure to tune to Quick Hits with Shannon. He talks about everything, man. Like I said, we got movie previews. And of course, we cannot forget about the Gridiron Address, man. The season's coming to a close here soon. We're way past the halfway point of it. I basically go on the Gridiron Address every week between the 4:00 games and Sunday night football with my boy Aaron Schneider. But again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to like this video. Make sure to subscribe to Boone Broadcasting, the best up-and-coming sports YouTube channel on the internet. I want to wish you guys again a happy Thanksgiving, a happy holidays, and tune in next week for more baseball discussion. Until then, this is Chris signing out.